Okay, it's lesson 2, part 3, and I neglected to record this part of our WebEx session, so I'm going to run through the changes that we made. So on our index view, we had hard-coded these categories, but what I want to do instead is create a model and then have our data come from the model. So we're going to make up some fake categories. So in my index view, I'm just going to comment out the unordered list, and we'll make this dynamic. Then I'm going to go to Solution Explorer, and I'm going to right-click Models. I'm going to add a class. There's no add model. I'm just going to add a class. And our class names generally are singular, so I'm going to create a category class. I could give it a .cs extension, but that's optional. And click Add. And inside our category model, we're going to set up 2 properties. So every category is going to have an ID, which will be an integer, and it'll have a name, which will be a string. So I'll create 2 public properties. The first one will be an int. And our properties should be both readable and writable. So we're going to be able to get the value as well as set the value. We're going to have a property called ID and a property called name. So there's our really simple model. So every category will have a numeric ID and a text name. So we'll save that file. And then we want to go back to our categories controller. And in the index, we're going to use the category model to create 10 fake categories and send to the view for display. But first, we'll create an empty list of categories. I'm going to create a variable. I'll just use var. I don't have to declare what type it is. Visual Studio will interpret it automatically. I'll call my variable descriptively, call it categories. And it's going to be equal to a new list. And when we create a list, Visual Studio wants to know what type of list is this? Are these strings? Are these numbers? In this case, we are creating a list of category objects. Now I get this red underline. It says namespace category can't be found. There's a reason for this. Our controllers folder, our controllers are in the controllers folder. So on line 7, when we created a new controller, Visual Studio adds this namespace, our project name.controllers. When we look at our model, it's in the models folder. So the namespace here is project name.models. So these two can't see each other. So I'm just going to use the code hinting in Visual Studio. It gives me a red underline. So I'll just put my mouse over and it suggests potential fixes. So if I click the arrow, it says using COMP2084 get me a game.models. So if I click that suggestion, Visual Studio adds a reference. So now my controllers can view the models. Without this here, doesn't know what this category object is. So you can use the code hinting, or I could just manually add line 5 in code. And that will solve my error. I'm going to use a loop to create 10 fake categories. I'm going to start at 1 and loop until my counter is less than or equal to 10. And each time we go around the loop, we're going to add 1 to our counter variable called I. I could declare this as an int as well, doesn't matter. Visual Studio is smart enough to know to infer based on the way I'm using this variable that it is an integer. And this is common. We see this all the time in .NET, that we just use var to let the variable type be inferred. So now inside our loop, each time we go around, we're going to add a new category, and we're going to add it to the list. And Visual Studio recognizes if we're creating a category that every category has an ID and a name. So we're going to set our ID equal to the counter. So the first time it will be 1, the second time it'll be 2, etc. And our name property is going to be the string category and then we'll append the number on, but we have to convert it to a string. So our loop's going to run 10 times, and this will create 10 category objects with the IDs 1 to 10 and the names category 1 through category 10. And each time, not only are we creating a new category, but we are adding it to the empty list here. Now we need to pass the final list to the view for display. So not only do we want to load or return the index view, but we want to take our list that we've populated in our loop and we want to pass it. So now not only are we loading the view, but we are passing the view a list of categories. So now we want to go to our index view and write the code to display this list of 10 categories. Also make them linked. So the first thing we need to do on line 1, very first line, we have to declare a model. We have to tell this view what kind of data is coming from the controller method. So we're going to use the keyword IEnumerable. This basically just means a list, something we can iterate or loop through. So this page expects an IEnumerable of, we type our project name dot models, because that's the namespace, dot category. So what this means is it's telling the view that when it loads, it's going to receive from the controller a list of categories. And then we'll open our list. And we'll use a for each loop. So I'll create a variable called category. For each category in our model, we're going to create a list item, and we're going to display. You'll notice because we're passing in a type of object, it asks, do you want to display the ID or do you want to display the name? This is unlike the view bag, which is untyped. It doesn't know what's in the data. So this is why using a model is better. We could pass the data with a view bag, but we don't get this code hinting, which helps us be accurate. So we want to display the category name. So let's save this, and then we'll try our Shop Now button again. Now that this is commented out, instead of showing category 1, 2, 3, our Shop Now should show categories 1 to 10. So let's go back. I'll refresh my categories view. And we should get a bulleted list with 10 categories showing up. I'm just going to say start without debugging again. I'm not sure what's happened to my server. It seems to be timing out. Okay, it is running. It's just hanging for a minute. So now when I click Shop Now, I get 10 categories. So our loop is displaying the data. The last thing I want to do is add these links back around it. So inside my LI tags, I'm going to use an ASP controller is categories. ASP action is browse. And this time my ASP root category name is equal to @category name. And then I'll move the display of my name inside my anchor tag. And now my categories should be links. So if I refresh, each of these should be clickable now. So our page expects a list of categories, and we can loop through to display each one dynamically. So if we change the code that populates our list, we don't have to make any changes to the view. The view is just going to loop through whatever is in this list. So now these are links, and when we click, it shows our browse page and shows us the proper category. So there was all the code we needed for today. Eventually, we're not going to use a loop like this. We're going to query the database instead. But this is basically how our controllers would select a list of data, pass the list to the view, and how our view would use a loop to display that list. Maybe it's in a table. In this case, we've used an unordered list. Now, the one other thing we did was Farouk asked a question about how do we get this on GitHub? So I'm going to show you. So I've already initialized Git in this project. So I'm going to open a different, maybe the sample project we created last week, just so you can see it. So I'm doing this with my other project, but you can do this with your project to get it up on GitHub. So down here at the bottom, if you haven't added it to source control, first thing you do is just click Add to Source Control and choose Git. And then you can open the Team Explorer window. Now, if you don't see Team Explorer here, you can turn it on through View and Team Explorer. And the first thing you'll have to do is connect your GitHub account to your Team Explorer. So if you click on Home and Settings, under Git and you want to click Global Settings. And in here, you'll put in your GitHub username and your GitHub email address. Once you do that, it may pop up a prompt asking you for your GitHub password. So this is global. You only have to do this once, and then GitHub will store your credential from now on. Then you go back to Home, and you click on Changes. I'll just have to change something here. So I'll just make a change in my footer and click Save. When I go back to Team Explorer now, it shows my layout file has been changed. So I'll put in a commit message that says changed footer. And I'll click Commit All. That'll make a new commit. And then it says the commit was created. Sync to share your changes with the server. So I'll just click Sync. And then I want to publish to GitHub. It'll default, my repository name will default to the name of my Visual Studio project. That's fine. I can put in a description. I can make my repository private. You'll want to make yours private. I'm going to keep mine public. And then we just click Publish. So this is going to copy the repository up to GitHub. And now if I want to make other changes, let's say I want to change the footer again. I'll call it My Web Applications. I'm going to make some other changes. So I'll save those, go back to Team Explorer. And again, I can make a new commit. I change the footer text again. Again, I'll click Commit. I'll sync. And I can push. It says I have one outgoing commit, so I can do a push. And that'll upload my change to GitHub. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the lesson, and I'll see you next week.